Sorry, I did remove you because I was struggling to hear what you're saying, and we've got other people waiting. Again, if you would like to appear, contact request, Magic Sandwich Show. I see there's best part of 500 people watching the show. I'm somewhat surprised there aren't more people wanting to talk to us, but hey, maybe it's been a long day. I think the next person on is a Nightmare, or maybe that's his name, Nightmare. Yes, Nightmare.
I'm going to be rude and eat a sugar-free popsicle while we do this.
You're outrageous, Matt. I can't believe
which may turn some of my fans on. I did a sword swallowing bit, and when I was at a convention, one of my gay fans came up and mentioned that he particularly enjoyed that bit. So,
well, one second, Nightmare, before we come to you. One of the things I saw, I tried to re-find it, but I couldn't. You're actually a really proficient amateur magician, aren't you?
I think that's probably giving me a lot more credit than I deserve, but I have been involved in magic for all my life. I'm not, practiced or doing anything at the moment.
Well, I saw you. I thought you did a good job.
Well, thank you.
Anyway. It's just an aspect of your character. I didn't know whether people knew about it. Nightmare, welcome to the show.
Hello. First of all, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
You're coming across like a bull with a megaphone.
Right. Well, I'll have a fiddle with...
Don't sweat it. Just go on.
Yeah, okay then. Right. Even though I'm no fan of religion by any stretch of the imagination, I've never called myself an anti-theist at all. And so my question is basically this. How do you define anti-theism, and how do you think the label applies to you, if at all?
Can I go first on this?
Okay.
By all means.
I don't define it. If people are going to put a label on me, then it's up to them to define it. So, to me, it's meaningless. I may be... in their view, unless they define it and tell me exactly what it is, I don't know whether I am anti-theist or not. That's my...
And I'm in the same position. I don't know what an anti-theist is. I know Matt has a definition for it, but it's never mattered much to me, so I don't even remember it. Matt?
Yeah, and I'm normally okay self-identifying as an anti-theist as long as it's my particular definition, which is... a theist believes that a God exists, an atheist doesn't believe that a God exists, and an anti-theist like myself actively believes that there are no gods, but I don't assert that as absolute certainty. It's a position I've defended. I defended it in Oklahoma briefly. It's one of those things where if you compared it to, let's say, fairies, you might have a fairyist who believes that there are fairies and an afairyist who doesn't believe that there are fairies. I would be an anti-fairyist. I actually believe there are no fairies. But I'm happy to be proven wrong. And it's the extreme position that if I assert that, I do have a burden of proof as long as I'm trying to convince somebody else of it. And which is why I normally identify as an atheist. Because the big issue... it kind of, if you look at it from a court of law perspective, the defendant is either always guilty or innocent. But we don't ask a jury to determine guilt or innocence. We ask them to decide guilty or not guilty. And guilty has the burden of proof. As a juror, I could sit on a jury of people who would vote not guilty, which would be the atheist position. But I might also believe that the defendant is actually innocent, which would be the anti-theist position. And that's the best analogy I've got for it.
Yeah, and on the same note, that I have a high level of confidence that there is no gods. I mean, on one level, I can say that there's no reason to believe that there are gods, but I can also say that there's lots of good reasons not to believe that there was any truth to any of the claims about God. I object only to the Gnostic claim that I know for certain there is no God. Regardless how confident I am of that, I would still not say that I know that there is no God. I don't consider it possible that there is a God. A God is impossible by definition, being miraculous. I just don't want to make statements of that extremity.
I mean, my view is this: rather than trying to put a label on me, just ask me, what is it you actually think? And this whole, arguments you see time again: are you agnostic? Are you an atheist? Are you anti-theist? If these are labels which the people that are trying to put them on have their own interpretation of what that means. Just ask me; I'll tell you. I think that's the best way to get around it. What are you?
It might take an hour, but I'll happily tell you. But it'll take me a long time to explain it.
Yes. Well, from my position, I see religion and, all kind of mythology as a concept. I can oppose a concept and criticize a concept just as much as I criticize a movie or a book or any other work of fiction or anything else. And at the same time, I see religion as something that's almost entirely a human construct. And so people make it whatever the heck they want it to be. And so if someone wants their religion to be a belief that Jesus is a nice guy and that their God is a loving God and, saves the babies miraculously from a plane crash, then that's fine with me. It's the actions that matter. It's when people like the Westboro Baptist Church and the Creationists and so many other people start trying to remove rights and actually try and invade on facts, like scientific facts, that I, start to get a problem.
I'm sorry. You don't even need to refine it as to scientific facts per se.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Now, when you make a statement when you state something as fact, you should be able to verify that statement is true. And my problem with religion is that they state as fact things that are not evidently true. They can't be verified. They can't be tested. They're not supported. They're not indicated. There's no way to distinguish the religious beliefs from the illusions of delusion or some lie they pulled out of their ass. And Matt phrased it very eloquently once upon a time when he said, you have to show that there's a there there. Mm-hmm. And I love the way that he put that, meaning substantiate what it is that you're saying. Let's not just have a premise that you assume. Let's show me that there is something there to work with, and then we work on the details of that.
And I'd like to say that, while I understand the position that Nightmare is talking about, I can't agree. The people who have invented their own, for example, Christianity as kind of the example you used, where their Jesus is a nice guy and it doesn't really encroach on facts and things like that, I recognize that they're less harmful than their more fundamentalist cousins. But they're still part of the problem because they are lending credence to the fundamentalist aspect. They're still most often appealing to the same holy books. They're just picking and choosing out of it. But even if they weren't, even if they had invented a completely fictitious religion that seemed largely harmless and that I had no major objections to, I'm still concerned with truth. I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible, and that's for a very good reason. And it's because the more my internal view of the world matches reality, the better my decisions are going to be. And the more we diverge from that, the more likely we are to make mistakes. Our beliefs inform our actions have consequences. And so even those religions that seem innocent and that seem relatively harmless, I don't buy that they are, because you cannot truly believe something and not have it impact other aspects of your life. It may have a much minimalized impact on the rest of your life, but I still object. Now, am I going after those people, you need to stop, blah, blah, blah? No, of course not. More often, I think those are the people who are by and large going to agree with us. For example, the Reverend Barry Lind here in the United States, he and I obviously disagree on whether or not there's a God and all the aspects of the particular Christianity that he has invented for himself. But he's an avid supporter of church-state separation and somebody who I will happily work alongside with. And I will disagree with him, without hesitation. If we're both standing on a dais talking about church-state separation, and he makes a claim about his religious beliefs, I'm going to challenge it right in the middle of that, because I think it sends the wrong message. It reminds me a little bit of the people who have adopted this idea that I'll accept evolution, but I still think there's a God who worked through evolution and manipulated and tinkered. And, you can't disprove that, and it may not affect anything in a grand way because they're still accepting the process of evolution, but it's not true. And I think that the more things you believe like that, the more likely you are to make mistakes when assessing other claims. Is if we're not going to tune our brains to be the best at detecting reality, to be able to detect bullshit, we're making, I think, a critical error. And it's why one of the reasons why I say that my atheism is a result of my skepticism, and my skepticism is much more important to me than my atheism. If somebody presents evidence for a God, I'll change my mind right now.
Yeah, and I similarly simply don't want to be deceived. That's my whole thing. And one of the aspects that I have to that a lot of people aren't aware of is that when you are not convinced of something, it doesn't mean that you believe that it is not true. You can entertain a notion that you're uncertain of. You don't have to commit. Do you believe this happened? Do you believe that it didn't happen? And people want to pressure you to make that decision. You don't have to. You can entertain as possible any number of things. I just don't want to be convinced of something that turns out not to be correct at all.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And the thing is, I don't necessarily disagree with it. I just think it's, a matter of what you're arguing when. Like, for example, if someone asks me what I think about, the Christian God and how likely it is to exist, I'll say that I'm almost, certain to, not exist. But just the thing is that, let me just say how I define anti-theism to begin with, because it's kind of important. I just kind of take it as against a belief in God. Now, I'm not against someone holding that position, even though I may disagree with it. Yeah, I do think that it's more important to, take a logical step, if you will, and, focus on what can be shown to be true. But, when it comes down to actions.
Yeah. Is there a word to define someone who is actively against religion? Because that would be my position too.
Yeah, the way I put it is that I'm not against a person holding a belief in God as they so choose, but I'm against organized religion or the actions of that religion. And like I said, I may very well argue against any particular concept of religion, just that I don't oppose a person, actually holding it. Doesn't mean doesn't mean they're right. It doesn't mean, that they have any evidence for it or anything.
Do you think it's appropriate to respect the views of someone when those views are so palpably wrong?
That's the thing. That I've always, wondered exactly what it means to respect religion. I don't think you should respect an idea just as much as, say, if you thought that my favourite film is Jason and the Argonauts, and if you thought that was the worst movie of all time, I don't have to respect your opinion on that. I can say how much I think that you're wrong when it comes to that. But, I can still, agree to disagree and allow you to have that.
You can respect their right to hold that view.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a difference between respecting the actual view and respecting somebody's right to hold their view.
Exactly.
The difference between respecting someone's belief in something that might be true and the dishonesty that I see inherent in religion goes back to what William Lane Craig was talking about credentials. I mean, I saw footage of Ray Comfort giving a sermon in a 7,000-seat megachurch. Now, what credentials does Ray Comfort have to address this audience other than he is a petty liar? And that's all he ever had, and that's all he ever is, and I'm afraid it's all he will ever be. And yet he made how many thousands of dollars indoctrinating all of these people with utter crap. And yet this same person will also not bow to debate anyone who does not who is not loftier than he, so that he can pull himself up by someone else's bootstraps. And that's what
but I think what you've just identified there, Aaron, is a very clear position where you are not respecting his views, you're not respecting him. because he is dishonest. But he is provably dishonest. Now, if he didn't go around preaching and he didn't go around deliberately lying about evolution, something of which he has been told time and time again, well, I suppose he could be so thick that he can't get it, but he's not. He's dishonest. He's doing it for money, and he's now doing it. He's now refusing to define evolution on the basis that he doesn't think it ever happened, so why should he define it?
Given the comments that you've just made about Ray Comfort, it stuns me that he has forsaken the invitations of It's the Superfly and myself and Matt and you, for all these people that were involved in this charity, to have Ray Comfort come on here and just spout his opinion. I can't believe that he would deny such an opportunity.
Well,
Yeah.
Ray actually did our show a couple of months ago. My take on Ray,
No,
I
I
have
meant
a hard time.
I'd invited him here.
Yeah, I have a hard time actually figuring Ray out because on the one hand, I agree there are instances where your only option is he's either like insane or lying. But when you talk to him, I don't get there's like a different type of deception going on, and I think he's engaged in such a high level of self-deception and ignorance that it's not the same as consciously lying. I think that he has consciously lied on a number of occasions, but I think most of what we write off as him being dishonest is not something that he's consciously aware of. He's like somebody who believes something so strongly that he knows the opposition's wrong, even if he can't quite figure out why. And so he's going to say whatever it takes to try to get his message across, even if it makes him look crazy and as a liar. Matt,
I think one of the problems with him is, I think you're to a large degree you're right, but if somebody willfully ignores the evidence and carries on spouting out, is that him just sort of like doing it for God, or is it dishonesty? It's a very narrow line, and
well, so
I know that you're too polite, Matt. I'm prepared to say that he's passed that line and he is dishonest.
Well, this is why he won't define the position, because it is, as Matt says, to a degree. He will not define the position because he knows the definition is correct, that any definition he gives that he can say is not true, is not actually the right definition, is therefore a straw man. So it goes back into what I told Randy a little while ago. He knows the position is wrong and can't allow himself to be put in a position where he has to admit that the position is wrong. So he is lying to himself, and on some level he knows that he is lying to himself, but won't let himself admit that he is lying to himself.
If that's the case, then I would say that that's dishonest. Nightmare, I'm terribly sorry. I do appreciate your call. Yes, of course.
Right. I just want to close out before I go, is that I respect a person based on their actions. And so if a Christian is not, deliberately lying and just admits their own belief and maybe just, works for the charity, but otherwise keeps religion to themselves and is a nice guy, then I'll respect them based on that. But I won't respect someone like Ray Comfort, who is a deliberate liar who scams people. And it's, all depends on the exact individual person. I won't disrespect a person just because they're religious, but at the same time, I won't respect them just because they hold a religion. And I won't, suggest that they are immune from criticism or anything of the sort just because they hold a belief.
I think that's pretty much what we said, and I have enormous respect for you for coming onto a public show with headgear on like that.
No one's had to.
You're done.
DPR, you are way too quick on that. You drop people out in mid-sentence, and then, you tell them to mute the blog TV so they don't hear the apology that you give a fraction of a second after you do that. By the time they got it right back on, they're pissed off because you kicked them off. You do that way too often. I have to throw in a point. Somebody had asked me in the chat to clarify. Matt, we talked for a long time about how difficult it was to get Ray Comfort onto your show, that you'd put out many invitations and that they were all ignored, and that you knew that he had received those invitations. You knew that he was aware of them because his staff or whatever would report to you, and then suddenly when Richard Dawkins recognizes your show. Now Matt wants to, or now Ray wants to be on. I went through something similar where somebody in communication with Ray Comfort is relaying messages back and forth. And what I had set up was I said that it would be great to have Ray on, and Ray can get on there and argue with me, and I was going to make a prerequisite that Ray advertise the charity in advance so that his own audience would be putting in donations for this charity. And I did this not to stop Ray from getting on, but I wanted to illustrate a point that he is not charitable. That if he were required to join with us in endorsing something, as noble as what we're trying to do here, that he would not be involved. And that was more or less the response that I got. It wasn't necessarily that he was ignoring me, but when I laid out that I want him to do this, no, he's not going to do it. That's the answer that I get, and I don't get it directly from him. So if somebody wanted me to clarify whether he was ignoring me or whether he actually declined, I'm gray there because I'm talking to an intermediate. Well,
let me just add to that. I messaged him about 6 months ago. I invited him to be involved in the show. I indicated that I would expect him to advertise it or promote it, and I told him that he wouldn't make any money out of it and all the money would go to charity. I never got a response. Aaron messaged him 2 months later. Similarly, he didn't get a response. Superfly, 2 months after that, didn't get a response. So that's... Whether that helps you, I don't know. Grappling Ignorance, welcome to the show, and can I just thank you very much for your contribution a few hours ago, and I apologise for having a bit of a nap. Matt, sorry, before we come to you, Grappling. Matt.
The three of us, we need to get together a little bit more, because I could probably get Ray back on the show, because he said on his blog that he'd be happy to come back on, and so... in front of maybe next year's Blog TV benefit, we could get Ray on my show. I could just confront him there live to see if he'd be willing to come on and support this. First of all, this is the type of thing I don't know how any decent person on the planet could possibly object to supporting a charity effort. I mean,
we had two criteria. One, he would not make any money on this. I told him that through his messenger, I told him that I would not have any discussion with him if there was a chance he was going to make money on the deal. So I was going to make sure that it was all entirely for free. And then also I was going to require that he advertise that he's going to do something charitable with us, which of course he doesn't want to admit that we are going to be charitable, whether he admits that he is. So there was two reasons why he wouldn't be involved.
It's a nice idea, but we can look into it, perhaps. I thought I was going to get an invitation to the wedding when you said we three should meet up more often.
If you want to come down, you're certainly welcome. You want to make the trip.
That's very kind of you. Grappling Ignorance, as I say, thank you very much for filling it out, and I apologise for, obviously, I don't know what happened. I assume I put you in a very difficult position when you were trying to finish your hour, and I was fast asleep with my head on my desk. But how can we help you, sir?
Good morning. No worries, DPR. It happens when you try to stay up for over 24 hours and you didn't have anybody important coming around or anything. It was nothing that you might want to be awake for, like, AC Grayling. Or anything.
It was really odd because I remember I thought, right, there's 20 minutes, and I started jotting out a few notes about what I was going to, and I thought, okay, 20 minutes to go. Right, okay, what should I do next? Bang. Head went down. And then the next thing I know, I look up, and he's on the screen, and it's like, what's happening? It was just, it was very embarrassing. It wasn't professional, but, hey, this happens. Anyway.
It is what it is.
How can we help this out?
Yeah, well, the topic was of interest to me that you're all discussing on two accounts. First of all, I might as well explain. Matt, love your show, that sort of thing. The reason I am an ambiguous green shadow is I'm a teacher in the Bible Belt. Had a YouTube channel on which I showed my face, and high school teacher, and students came across it, and I nearly lost my job because of it. So that's why I now, on my current channel and in general online, show up like this. That being said, I have to comment that you people, how dare you talk about Ray Comfort and his lack of charitable actions when his watch is bringing hundreds of dollars to this charity right now. I mean, granted, Thunderfoot had to take it from him and then, give it away to charity, but still, indirectly, Ray Comfort is giving $275 to this charity. And
can I just deal with that point, Grappling? Because I think it's one of those interesting aspects of Ray, and I think this is one of the things that Matt was touching upon. There are times when he comes across as a really decent and generous person, and I've heard this from, for example, on the 2 occasions that Thunderfoot has met him. The first occasion, after their interview, Ray Comfort took him out for lunch and insisted on picking up the tab. Well, why shouldn't he? He's got a little bit more money than Thunderfoot. Second occasion, he insisted on giving him his watch. So in that sort of way, yeah. And I've heard it also from somebody else. Oh, I'll tell you who it was. It was James Stillwell. We had him on the Magic Sandwich Show a few months ago. He also said that Ray can show that sort of generosity. So I wouldn't say that he's mean and uncharitable in some regards, but
I would just like to point out that the time that he gave the sermon in the mega church that I was talking about, he made more money for that brief speech than this charity has raised in the last 24 hours.
It's absolutely incredible.
Don't depress me, Aaron. Anyway, you had a second point, Grappling.
Yeah, well, that initial point was actually just obviously tongue in cheek. But on the subject of the anti-theist concept and with the label that comes with it and the importance behind what it means, I don't tend to label myself as an anti-theist. In general, the language that comes with that, it would be like kind of like I get that it fits easily in terms of how we use it, but it would be like saying an anti-atheist rather than a theist or a strong theist. And that I would rather label myself as anti-theism than an anti-theist. And I know it's very semantic, but I have nothing against.
I'm sorry, Grappling. This is the point I was going back to before. It's attaching a label, and that label has subjective an opinion to what it exactly means, and it is sort of like semantic. But what's the point? Why not just say this is what I believe? And if someone said to me, "Am I anti-theist?" I would say, "Well, what do you mean by that? If you mean, do I think that there are bad things about religion, and the world would be a better place if we didn't have religion?" Well, in some regards, yes. And Matt has mentioned some of these much earlier on. But do I think that the world would be a better place if religion was gone altogether? I don't think it probably would, and I don't think that's likely. So, I mean, it's just an unnecessary label. Just ask people what they actually think. I think it's just.
You don't think the world would be a better place if religion were completely gone, if it vanished?
Well, firstly, yeah. I don't think that it would ever happen. But it's like saying, would the world be a better place if people didn't believe in fairies? I mean, if these are personal beliefs that don't have any impact.
All right, well, let me clarify then.
Well, let me finish on. If they don't have any impact on other people, then what is the problem with people holding these beliefs?
Okay, where is the benefit? First off, let's look at the fact that there is no benefit on believing anything on faith.
There is.
There is benefit. On assuming the factual accuracy of something that you have assumed without reason, and then will defend against all reason, that is unsupported. There's no benefit to. I mean,
there is. Let me give you an example of what the benefit is. A person gains a degree of security and comfort, thinking that there is someone in the sky that's looking after them. Now, that doesn't affect their lives to a great degree. It certainly doesn't impact on anyone else's lives. There is a benefit for them.
I disagree. I
disagree on both points.
And if you don't mind, let me have Adam first. First,
I disagree too, but you can go.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad that Aaron Ra and Matt Dillahunty are finally yielding to someone like me.
I've been bitch slapped about 4 times now, so getting a double whammy at the end of the show.
Get ready
by Grappling and Aaron.
Bring it on. First,
that could get the
on your point about why attach labels to people, and why not just ask me what I am or what I think and what I believe in, that sort of thing. I agree that would be much better in general, if we could do that. But labels exist for a reason. It's because you don't have time in general conversation or when talking about other people. I can't say, oh yeah, Matt Dillahunty, he is, and then give a 2-paragraph explanation of his thoughts on life, his actual beliefs, the things he doesn't believe, how he feels in relation to everything. I totally
agree. Labels are a useful shorthand a lot of the time, but if you're going to use a label, do not expect it to be accepted by the person that you're trying to label. We agree on that.
Yes. I am shocked and appalled that DPR would ever possibly interrupt me. But yes, I agree. Moving forward to the point about when you said that it is a benefit for someone to have that feeling of safety and comfort that something is watching over them. Now, if I am on a tightrope and I have the feeling of safety and comfort that there is a net beneath me in case I fall, am I any safer if it's not really there? If I'm 100% convinced that net is down there and it's going to catch me if I fall, does it make me safer? Can I say that it is a benefit for me to believe that net is there? When I fall, is it going to be there for me? Am I any safer than I was if I knew that it wasn't going to be there? I think that my decisions to engage in the act of walking that tightrope might be they would definitely be more well-founded if I had based my decisions on actual reasonable information, like knowing whether or not it was there. And if I didn't know for certain that it was there, at least to acknowledge that, yeah, I don't know that for sure, and I'm taking a certain risk in doing
I've got your point. And I'm sorry if I'm interrupting you. I've got your point. Go ahead. I accept that. I will say this, and that was probably not the best example that I would use, but and I retract it. I think there are occasions when that sort of belief can mean that people do behave in a way that isn't most appropriate. But let's take a less extreme one. Let's say that people believe that they're going to meet their dead relatives when they die and it's all going to be lovely. Is there any damage in having that comfort? Matt wants to speak. Matt?
Yes, there is damage in that. Penn Jillette actually addressed this quite a while ago in a way that I thought was wonderful in his NPR thing, This I Believe. And that is that this idea that you're going to be able to meet your loved ones again afterwards has a side effect that you may not treat them properly in this life. As someone who is convinced that this is the one and only life I get, I tend to treat people in a way that I know I'm not going to get a chance to make up for this if they die or tomorrow. Kind of taking a half step back, Grappling Ignorance's example was really good. The example I've used before regarding prayer as one of the possible benefits people claim is if you're trapped in a coal mine, I freely admit that somebody who sits down there and prays is more likely to survive long enough to be rescued than the person who panics. But that's not a benefit of the actual prayer. Instead, if that person realized that the reason that they're more likely to survive until they're rescued is because they are conserving oxygen, that's the information that we need to get out to people. The truth, I reject this idea that beliefs can operate in a vacuum where they do not affect other beliefs. And that is why I am absolutely opposed to every false belief. And while I recognize that there's comfort that people derive from these beliefs, I think that we would be better off if we actually work to understand reality and equip people with the tools that they need to deal with reality on reality's terms. And no matter how much we'd like to pretend that, this tiny little false belief doesn't really hurt anything, that's a belief that that I think is just a flat out lie. It's a bit of self-deception that you can believe something and have it not affect other beliefs, and that you're somehow better off than actually dealing with reality.
It's a fair point. I want Aaron to go next, so I get finished with a triple whammy of bitch slapping. Aaron.
I had something I was going to say on it. I've been waiting for several minutes to say it, and then I got a private message, and then I got distracted, so I'm lost. So, move on.
Okay, Grappling, was there anything else? Because I've got about 5 or 6 people who are trying to get on.
Yeah.
Don't have a go at me. I don't mind. Once I've been bitch slapped by Eugenie Scott and Lawrence Krauss, I'm done. I've got no credibility left.
It is a fascinating conversation, and you're all great individuals. I'd love to carry on talking to you all day, but we'll allow you to get the other callers in here and continue. DPR, you've done a great job organizing the event, even if you might fall asleep every now and then. I'm glad you were awake for Matt. So I'll get off of here, and I'll let you guys continue. Thanks a lot, Matt, Aaron, and DPR. Have a good one, fellas.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for contributing to the program and hosting that hour. And I blame you entirely for putting me to sleep. If you'd been interesting, I would have stayed awake. I can't believe I'm so rude to people. I'm terribly sorry.
Especially after they've hung up.
Oh, that's the best time to do it. I'm a little bit out of order, and also I know that some people have sent contact requests, and the contact request comes in one name, and I accept it, and then I can't find the name because the name is completely different. So if you are trying to get on and you have sent one, it might be worth sending me another message. But I think I'm trying to do as best I can in the order that they came in. Bear with me. I think the next person is going to be
I remember what I wanted
Brett.
to say now.
Okay. Brett,
Yes,
I'm going to bring you in whilst Aaron speaks.
Okay, yeah, it's the thing about when you believe, and I was just talking about faith in general, in whatever that might be, but when you believe specifically in an afterlife, it cheapens this life. And this is just an expansion on what Penn Jillette said, which I also saw, and I thought it was a beautiful sentiment. And I just wanted to add to that when you think that this life continues on and that this is the justification for the ardors that you may have to experience. I mean, a lot of people will tell me how horrible this planet is and how great things will be in the afterlife. And it's not horrible to me. This is the only life I've got. I better enjoy it. I better, at least, if I can't say something good about it, at least I have to allow myself to be impressed. And so I find that I tend to enjoy the weather no matter what it is and make the most out of it, because what other choices have I got? And when it's over, I'm done. I'm a couple dozen pounds of ate meat going bad.
And what sort of cruel joke would it be to die and then find yourself still around and somebody saying, oh, that entire experience was just, the equivalent of wiping your feet on the doormat, and now you get to be to the real existence. I mean, any God that could fuck you.
I think it's worse than that, though, Matt, because what I can't get my head around is that people that think an eternity in the afterlife is a blessing. I cannot imagine anything worse than living for eternity. Now, I do accept that I probably am going to end up dying before I would really like to. I think that in an ideal world, to get everything done that I want to do, I'm going to have to be about 150, 160. Not infirm. I mean, that's a sort of like time sign. So I'm going to go out before I do. But an eternity, I mean, there's going to come a point where you just sort of like, I just need to get out of it. I can't deal with it anymore. This is not a blessing. I mean, does anyone else agree with that?
No, absolutely. I mean, when there was an episode of The Twilight Zone, little Anthony Fremont, that kid that had his family trapped in the house, the kid has inexplicable, miraculous powers. He's unlimited powers, and he knows what you're thinking, so you better always think happy thoughts. And that episode of The Twilight Zone was an illustration of what heaven is like from my perspective. Why would I want to be trapped in the house of little Anthony Fremont? And you know that eventually you've got eternity to piss this kid off, and that's all he's good at is getting pissed off, and he can read your mind. Ah!
Yeah, I used to actually agree with you, and I said much the same thing. I do think that the idea of eternal life, cheapens this life much in the same way that I think, about flowers and their beauty, the idea that they were created by God cheapens what they actually are. And I used to say that I didn't want to live forever, but I'd like to live as long as possible, just short of forever. I don't think I have an opposition to living forever if it's an existence that allows me to continue to explore and learn.
Yeah.
And as we live in a dynamic universe, and hopefully any sort of afterlife, if there was one, would be dynamic, then there would be, more things to learn than you could possibly do, because it's, changing all the time. So I'm a little less likely to say that I wouldn't want to live forever. But yes, I can certainly understand the boredom of traditional ideas of heaven, heaven for the atmosphere and hell for the company type thing.
Yeah, and I gotta say something about my late father, who I know was a theist his whole life. He held no religion. He didn't hold religious beliefs. He never discussed religion. I know that he believed in God, and he considered you an idiot if you did not believe in God. But he didn't ever go into detail about what those beliefs were. And at the end of his life, on his deathbed, I remember my mother had offered to bring in, the clergy to bless him on his way out of this world, and it was strange that he looked at me, and he didn't address the answer to her. He looked at me and he says, "No, it's too late for that." And my dad was an admirable adventurer. He's one of the, you hear about people that you drop them in the forest and they'll build a town. He actually did that. And my dad could do everything. And when he was dying and they told him that he had just a few hours left to live, he said, "Well, I've never tried death, done everything else." And I think that's a great way to go out.
This is a very touching story. And before we come to you, Brett, can I just say it appears as if we've just been featured on Blog TV. And if you're joining the show for the first time, you are joining the end of what is a 25, almost 26-hour program in support of Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. And if you are minded to, please go to one of the donation sites that are linked in the banner above and give as generously as you can. Brett, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Am I transmitting?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Cool. I'm a little bit lost because I kind of sent a request an hour ago. What's kind of the topic now?
the topic
whatever
is,
you want to ask.
Exactly, whatever you want.
I was kind of directing a kind of a story that Aaron and Matt might find interesting. I came from. I'm living in Texas right now, and I'm going to UTD right now, and I originally came from Austin, and I had to. After my father died, I had to move to a very rural Texan town, like just a couple hours south of Dallas, and particularly the point I'd like to highlight is when we should start stopping religion is not when people just have odd, crazy ideas. It's when they start actually coming to the schools and stopping things, and you'll actually see that a lot more in rural Texas. When I was in my senior year, 2008, just a few years ago, in my high school, there was a dual credit program being offered through the local junior college, and for some reason, they couldn't have a professor from the college come in, so they had just the vice principal who had a master's in English just do the class. And in short, he was a real asshole, but he would often just go on spiels about creationist nonsense, like dinosaur footprints looking old because they've been out in the sun for so long. It's just the most ridiculous things he would go on, and it's a good thing Catholics destroyed all the Vikings and everything because they're the one true religion. And it was just really disturbing for me because I was the only open atheist, and I'd just been, harassed throughout the entire, since I was a sophomore in high school. And I was just sitting in class and just utter dumbfoundedness, just looking around at the other classmates, and they don't have a problem with it. And these are the same people who I went to like my biology class, and the biology teacher would just be she was an actual good science teacher, I'll give her that, but she would always just broach evolution with just, these people are, this is what people, just because it's scientific fact, it doesn't mean what you believe in. And you can just tell she was just so frightened of talking about it.
She wasn't a good teacher then, was she?
Well, it wasn't that so much as she encouraged students to look out, but she always had the clause added in just because you could tell where she didn't want to lose her job. Because she would have like a list we'd have to read and do book reports, and she would always include things like Dawkins, the Blind Watchmaker, and stuff. And it was
I mean, I apologise. That was very dismissive of me saying that she wasn't a good teacher, because I as I say, something I'm becoming more aware of is just how difficult it is for people in America to actually come out and say they're atheists. I think it's absolutely disgraceful that someone can lose their job over these sorts of things, or not even be able to have a YouTube channel and show their face because they're in danger of losing their job. I mean, in this country, we have in employment law we have laws against discrimination on the grounds of religion, which includes atheism. I'm just surprised you don't have it in America, but there we are. Yeah, I think it's a shame.
One of the oldest friends that I have was an instructor in a community college on anthropology, and she was fortunate in that she was only teaching cultural anthropology, but she still had students coming into her class seemingly with the intent of disrupting their class. And I know that there have been materials published by creationist organizations with the express use that students follow these guidelines on disrupting the classroom and subverting whatever evolutionary message they might be trying to spread. And so she would be harassed by these students in her class, and she has no expertise in these arguments. I mean, she knows cultural anthropology, doesn't know physical anthropology. And I felt very sorry for her. I wished that I was in her classroom, because she would call me and she would tell me the things that her students had told her that day, and I would have to tell her the refutation 6 hours after it would have been useful information. When I took a anthropology class, I had to be a blessing to the teacher that was running it, because there was some asshole like that in that classroom too. That teacher was completely unprepared, and he didn't deserve the attack that was formulated against him by somebody who's paying to take the class to then unteach it for the other students. And I was glad that I could take part in that. And something similar happened in our class on the history of world religions. There were people that were trying to usurp that as well. And I was, I think, the only student in that class who got an A. And I was defending the teacher, who, by the way, was a Methodist and a fan of Bart Ehrman, which is kind of confusing. But anyway, I digress.
It's not such bad. It's not only bad against the teachers. It's also bad against the students in the high schools as well. Because as I was about to say, that the harassment got so bad, I was receiving physical threats against me, and I would report it to the teachers and the faculty and the on-school campus police, and they would just laugh it off at me. And so I had to start carrying around a mace at my own high school, just in case somebody carried through their threat.
Yeah, because what's the option? You have to become a really in-your-face militant atheist at that point, because you've been so polarized. I mean, you often see the lists of famous atheists. People will do YouTube videos of it where you'll find lists out on the web here and there, and there'll be hundreds of names. But most of those names are not people that would ever be interested in the kind of activism that we do, because most atheists simply don't have any concern or desire to believe these sort of things. It's not interesting to them, not even enough to dispel. It's not interesting enough to argue against. It's beneath their consideration. That's where most atheists are, and that's where I wish we could all be, where this whole topic would be beneath our concern. And some of us have to be activists so that there can be others who can just sit back and not have to be dragged into this conversation every damn day.
Yeah, I was the only open atheist, but people would just come up to me and tell me, "Oh man, you're so brave, you're so brave." And I'm like, I didn't even want it to be like this. I got outed. And so I would just make these lists of, I would collect from the Bible quotes supporting wild, crazy shit like, all babies go to hell, and just pass them out to people in like the cafeteria just to fuck with people. That did not endear me with the population.
Brett, good on you for standing up for your principles. I'm going to move rapidly on there because we've got loads of people. I didn't realise how many requests we've had, but thank you very much for the call. Matt, there's just one thing whilst I bring in the next caller that I would like to take your mind on, and that is the passage in Genesis. I think it's 21. It's the account of Jacob grappling with someone that may be God, and they grapple all night, and God sort of like is losing the fight. So although he describes this person grabbing his inner thigh, I think it was a cheap shot on his testicles. Are you familiar with that account, and what is the theological interpretation of that?
Oh, I don't know. You'd have to ask a theologian. Like many things, I've heard a number of different. Some would say that God came down and took physical form, and that this physical wrestling match actually took place. Others would say that it's metaphor, that he was struggling with God. I don't know how they explain away that God was potentially losing, but the cheap shot. I've heard Christian preachers talk about this was actually God convicting him of something, that he'd done as it happens. I find it's much more interesting for me if I kind of look at it in the way that seems most reasonable, and that is, this is a story that ancient people used and told, and to me it highlights the difference between the Jewish concept of God and the Christian concept of God. Somebody emailed or posted on my Facebook yesterday saying, I've heard you say that the New Testament is more immoral than the Old Testament. And could you, talk about that a little bit? And I said, one of the easiest ways to tell is to look at the most fundamentalist Christians and compare them to the most fundamentalist Jews and see how, what they do and how they interact with the rest of the world and what their actual beliefs are, kind of betray the difference between the Jewish Bible and the New Testament, and not to mention the doctrines of hell and salvation and substitutional atonement and all that stuff. I don't have much for you on the wrestling with God thing, but I have seen guys wrestle, and I watched a guy grab the penis of his opponent and just not let go. There was I think a YouTube clip or something of that. Oh no, it was on like World's Dumbest on True TV or something. It was absolutely hilarious and completely painful. So I guess it's God taking cheap shots. Kirky!
Or maybe we're just discovering why that guy got into wrestling in the first place.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Basically, what you've just shown is the ability of people to interpret the Bible in pretty much whatever way they want. Matt, you're familiar with Kirk. I think we're going to be having some punching in the face for Jesus, Kirk.
Yeah, I got a comment, Kirk, that you looked much better by this time of this charity than you did this time 2 years ago. So you've recovered quite well from your haircut.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, one other thing I got to say. Hi, Twofer Man.
Kirk, are you going to give us punch you in the face for Jesus?
If that's what y'all want, I can. That's not
well, I can. Give us your point first, and then we'll come to the song second.
All right, this is what I want y'all to talk about afterwards. Is like everybody has these great little deconversion stories, and they talk about their pain and whatnot. I'm just wondering, do y'all all have that, or were you always an atheist, or did you have to go through a deconversion? I kind of know Matt's, but I don't know DPR's and Arn's as well. All right,
serious? You don't know either of ours?
I kind of do, but I'm just looking for more details and just.
I'm not going to give it. I've given too many interviews on that nonsense.
And
not anymore.
I've talked. I could do it in about 2 seconds. I was very mildly indoctrinated when I was a child. The last prayer I made was probably when I was about 8 years old, and I asked for forgiveness for having doubts in God. By the age of 10, I had total doubt in God and never looked back since. We have, I think, a musical entertainment for us.
Okay, before this begins, I want to take a quick look at the donations. We are less than $200 away from breaking 21,000. Please, we've got close to 900 people here. Let's push that as much as we can, please.
Hey, Kirk, you capoed on 2?
I am, but it's just like I'm playing open, so ignore that. It's just like
I completely suck, so I'm going to mute, and then mime along with you.
Okay. All right, let's see if we can do this again.